Welcome to Champagne Chats, discussions from the green room where we talk all things about the events industry. I'm Kate Woolley, otherwise known as DJ Wildflower, and it's great to be joining you. Today, we'll be talking about event life with a very special guest, Renee Wingfield. Let's get started. Today on the show, I am so excited to have Renee Wingfield join me today. Renee, aka Miss Gale Force, is the managing director of Fliptease, a performance company that specializes in aerial, physical entertainment. She's trained in Beijing with the China acrobatic troupe, I love saying that, performed across the world from New York to London, is a recipient of the 40 Under 40 awards. I could absolutely go on as an entrepreneur and entertainer, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me, Renee.
Thanks for having me, Kate.
So today, basically, we are inviting you into the green room for green room chats. And this is a concept that's been brought together by the fact that I just have a lot of really cool friends in the events industry. You are one of them. So I'd love to know from you a little bit of a background about how you got started in the events industry and also your education as well, because you're very knowledgeable.
I will give you the really quick highlights version. I grew up in regional Western Australia in a place called Bremer Bay, which is stunning as part of the Fitzgerald National Biosphere on a farm in a remote location. I then moved up to Albany and put into gymnastics and hated it at about 9 years old and wound up in community theatre in a company called Coco Youth Theatre, which is now Southern Edge Arts. In that time that I was there, we were able to do a whole bunch of regional training and Circus, including incredible directors such as Lockie McDonald, who used to work for Perth Festival, among other spaces, and met a whole repertoire of people through that space. You know, became a cool teenager and decided that I was really into sport, which carried me through a long way as a soccer official while I went to uni here in Perth. And then, fortunately, unfortunately, whichever way you toss that coin, I fractured my spine being a soccer referee at age, what was I, like 19 and a half. I was working on national games at that stage and just running on hard impact ground over and over again. So I wound up with microfractures through my lower back. It's pretty serious. So I started getting treatment. My then physio was very kind and said, you can either come to me for the rest of your life once a week, which will cost this much, or you can start doing something to repair your spine and repair your core, which you have none. Yoga is a great idea. And being a farm kid, I went, yoga's for hippies, because I knew nothing about the world. And he said, well, look, let's find a solution. He's like, what have you done in your life that engages your core and reduces weight? Like swimming's one way you could do it. What else could you do? And by chance, there was one circus class available in Fremantle at the then Cirque Berserk, which is now the WA Circus School, Circus WA. So by chance, I rang them. I said, I used to do trapeze as a kid. Can I come and join a class? And then one thing led to another. About 18 months later, by default, I wound up managing that circus school. Started a company at age 21 with my then partner, which is Fliptease, and the rest is sort of history and got me into events because I was suddenly surrounded by a community that was already doing it, and I was in a not-for-profit sector at the time.
Yeah.
So people were very generous with their advice and feedback. And it was a great way to start, and both sides, artistically and on the entrepreneurial side.
Yes, but also you've obviously had that programmed in you, that sort of drive from a very early age to compete, to manage, to do whatever you can to the best of your ability. So you've gone in your late teens in a circus environment and you end up running the operations, and then you start off running your own business. So there are signs from a very early age that you were going to be going out and doing things in your own way.
I guess so. I also felt that I would say that I am naturally competitive, but in my own way. And I can say to myself that I enjoy winning now, but I'd always pick spaces where I knew I would win.
Right.
I didn't compete against everyone else. I picked my niche.
Yeah.
Because, I was like, I was a terrible runner, but I really enjoyed running. So I was like, no one's doing triathlons. So I went and did triathlons, and because there was 2 people in my group, I would win. And it was a similar thing as like, don't compete where there's heaps of people. If you like winning, go compete somewhere else or make a new game, which was my whole point. It's
Making
like you
game. I
make
like
your
that.
game. Yeah, absolutely.
That speaks to my level of like talent where I'm not so good at the mainstream sports. You do other things.
I have had the feedback over my whole career, and no matter what I do, is I'm definitely not the most talented. I'm definitely not the most educated, resourced, any of those things. I just know what my game is and what my game isn't.
But if you're not the most talented or not the most resourced, from what I know of you, you're very well read. You will educate yourself and you will upskill in whatever facet. So if you're told to do one thing, you're going to do it and you're going to excel. I'm really interested to know your experience from as a regional kid, originally coming from like a soccer environment, then you were in the coaching space. How does it feel watching the Women's World Cup now in Perth? Is it something that you still feel connected to because of your soccer history?
I do feel really connected, but it's amazing to see because there just
wasn't
wasn't.
like
It wasn't
that.
there. I was the only female referee, like in a decade, and in the referees organisation here in Western Australia, there were 200 dudes of varying ages
and
one female, and like they had to assign me someone as a women's coach, and I had a dressing room by myself. It was
Wow.
it was amazing, and I only have positive. Yeah, it was phenomenal. And to see this, like there wasn't even a women's team. There was only just a women's league when I was in that space. And and after watching everything come to, and so many amazing pioneers to make this amazing to see, and the turnout's
so
been great.
special. And the scale of it last night, they had Australia, this was dating this filming, but Australia versus Denmark, and there was like 75,000 people in the stadium. When I went to see Taylor Swift in 2016, there were 77. And that to me just gives you an idea of the scale and the appreciation and the growth of women's sport and women representation. As a women business owner, as a 40 under 40 winner, I mean, you really are working in spaces where it's predominantly male dominated, which I'm also in that space, but less so now that there's more representation across all industries. But your role now, I imagine, would be a lot more in that mentor space where you would have been able to support and young women would have looked up to you in lots of different facets. Is that something that's actively part of your business model?
So internally we do a lot of mentoring, and I have a lot of I think the word that I like is like, I guess, protege that have gone out into the rest of the world, and we try to always make sure that the time spent with us, we actively try and get those skills up, and so that they can move on as us being as part of the step in their career. We don't expect that people are going to stay in events or entertainment for their whole life. Your life is a big, complicated, wonderful thing, and the work component's only a part of it. Your art component might be a small part of it. So whatever happens in that space, however long you stay, we hope it leaves you with joy and the next stage and the skills to bring you up to the next thing, whether it be parenting or a sales role or whatever those cases
Just
is.
real life
yeah,
skills.
That's right. And I think entertainment and events are about real life skills, like real-time management, crisis management,
Absolutely.
sales at all times, reputation management, all those things.
So I struggled to give your opening description of what you do based on how many different facets of business you kind of touch as a performer and also as a business manager. But how do you describe Fliptease?
So Fliptease in its current model, and we are in our 17th year this year, which is pretty wild.
Amazing. I don't know anyone who's had a job that long.
I know, right? I'm sure my job's been the same too. But certainly over the last 3 years of growth post-COVID, and I'll use this as the context, we had a decision whether we basically grow or die, because we were hitting such a level but without the resources needed that an actual company need to grow. It's just me in my house with lots of costumes and props and things, and managing projects and working with seasonal. And so there's been with the help of some fantastic peers and mentors, myself, we've been able to really stake the next future plan of where we're going, which is pretty exciting. Our main goal, and we've really dug into this over the last 6 to 12 months, is our job is to spread joy through live experiences.
That's fantastic. And that really does sum up what you do. It's that surprise and delight element, whether you're an actual mermaid in a tank, you manage other mermaids, and you also manage people in so many different, it's hard to actually list the types of entertainment you do very easily. But for someone who doesn't understand what Fliptease do, Give me sort of a bit of a Cliff's note of the sort of entertainers that you work with.
So my original set is from Circus, but I recognised early on that Circus is about spectacle and the delivery of joy, and that seizing of a very finite moment to either inspire, delight, surprise, shock, or just transcend someone's experience in a live setting. So it's really easy to go outside of the framework, because even Circus isn't particularly easily designed into a sentence. What is a circus?
Exactly. Like people don't like what my idea of circus versus other people. I think you're probably thinking clowns and animals and jugglers and those sort of traditional media. I've not seen any of that actually with anything that you do.
Look, we do some of those.
And I'm sure
things.
that you have.
We definitely
have seen juggling.
Yes, you've seen juggling. Yes.
But they've been on stilts with like not traditional things. So everything is done in an alternative kind of way.
Yeah. Well, in a way that like meets the brief, which is joy or suspension of disbelief, etc., is we want to make sure that we are conducting narrative in physical spaces using those skills and the skills of the artists that we have. We do a lot of design in terms of roving characters because it makes a great basis for people to explore their own, artists to explore their own skills and limitations and boundaries. It's also a way of producing sustainable work. So we work with a lot of corporate, retail, local government, education, that they're all our clients. And so there's a real mixture of audiences that we see over the year. And then we do a lot of the specialist stuff as well, which is the aerials component, which is where my specialty comes from. Acrobatics and designing corporate shows that work in very specific spaces. Western Australia is really limited by the resources available to specialty acts, and so we've had to build frameworks around those limitations, which has been great for us.
It's been fantastic. You've definitely got a reputation as that go-to in that space. How is it retaining the sort of talent in Perth where you have a limited network of opportunities? And I say that in a way of you've got a great network with your clients that you work with, but there are limitations of how many times a week certain acts can be rolled out.
Absolutely, and that's why we really focus on building the baseline skills. For what we've noticed is we're not looking for the highest level of skill. Yeah. We're looking for passion. We're looking for competence. We're looking for someone who can work in a team, because you and I know events is a team sport.
Yes.
And the best part of it is not only is it a team sport, it's a creative team sport.
Yes.
So you get to play a role. Occasionally it's the starring role. Occasionally and the other times it's not.
Yep.
You might only have your moment here and there.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it fun.
It does. I'm going to give an example of what you are. So as the Miss Gale Force, the fabulous performer that you are on stage, managing the troupe of entertainment for, it was WA Day, the community stage. And then literally, as the heavens came down, I saw you put your wellies on and your jacket on and you're literally lugging stuff out. So there is literally on stage running the show and then everything that it takes to load all of the equipment into the van out the back of the house. So you have to have a certain type of commitment to be able to do that. People see the performance and the fun, beautiful side, which is the great side, and that's the side that they're meant to see. But anyone who's actually really wanting to work into that, they have to have a certain kind of, I feel like the country commitment, that sort of rural experience of just getting in there and doing it has probably served you well. Is that right?
I think so. I think it's a level of tenacity and endurance. Both my parents are incredibly gifted, eccentric people in their own fields. And,
what are their fields?
So my mother is a postdoctoral anthropologist and now she works in restorative justice in the prison system.
Wow.
And so looking at other methodologies of essentially that restorative method of reconciliation between community and perpetrator and how that works. So very big field.
Wow.
And my father is a cattle farmer, but he's a pilot. He's an inventor. He's also a high maths brain and manages, a lot of cattle, a very complex agricultural industry.
Yes.
And growing up with both of those types of subsets in my family, you learn what hard work is. You also see the tenacity that it takes to even just get to those conversations, not including just surviving day to day.
No.
Like farming literally has your weather, market, marketing, and then politics all mixed in, and events is no different.
Absolutely.
And, 2 weeks of the year you're mustering cattle and it's the most stressful time of your life. Everyone's swearing at each other. It's really dangerous, way more dangerous than most of the events because it's, a little bit unregulated and time is really critical. And, the minute that you're turning the head of a muster might be the difference of being able to deliver a whole year's work. And I feel that events is very much the same. So all the planning in the world, you still have to keep your cool and manage it at the moment when the heavens open up.
Absolutely. It's interesting how you're equating that farming experience to events. Herding cats, herding cattle, whatever.
Yeah.
But literally it's the planning. So in our off season, and we're still working over winter, but generally, operationally, it's generally a time for planning and getting yourself ready for the summer seasons, the silly season and everything that's required. And these months are really critical. And I know as someone who is business minded and as organised as you are, you're probably really in that planning space with your business. What does winter look like for your company?
So we've been really fortunate that we've been pretty busy up until the end of July this year, just with ongoing events. We really haven't had a minute down, which is...
it's a great problem to have because seasonally a lot of other people aren't in that space. So that speaks to the variety that you're working across to keep things going.
And it's not just, I think we've actively planned that way to make sure that there's just this tick over so that it keeps momentum, especially amongst artists, because it can get really disheartening as an artist when it's like, there's no bookings for 3 months. What am I going to do? Like, do I get a retail job? Do I get a hospo job? How do I make my ends meet? And so just trying to keep that moving so that there's some stuff, why most of our industry is in Europe at the moment. Great for them. I'm so thrilled for them. We did it. It's, you just keep doing it.
Now the boss has to keep the
now we got to that's it. But it's also a time for, and we're trying to foster it in the executive team, is just really making sure that we're taking time to refine the muse. And there's something I've been thinking about a lot is the muses in Greek mythology, and how you let them find you. So you've got to clean house, make sure the planning's in order, because if the doorway's not swept, then the muse is going to get lost and soiled on the way in. So just really trying to keep those open spaces. Yeah. And just making sure that there's actually time to think, look at all the stuck points from the previous year, project the stuck points. We do what we call as a pre-mortem. I don't know if you've come across the concept.
So post-mortem, I know you go through the event, everything that's gone wrong. Pre-mortem, obviously you're going to try and avoid that stuff.
Yeah, well, you talk about what could go wrong, and not just in terms of planning. Let's talk about crisis managers, which we did in the lead up to WA Day. We were like, what happens? We know typically this can happen in this room. What's our thing? So we'd already communicated it back and had the conversation internally. So it was really easy for us to execute, even though we knew we had to be on site that day.
Yes.
And we could meet that expectation and keep everyone's spirits as high as we could in, an average weather day.
It was. And also there were certain safety elements. There were some performers that immediately got pulled because it was weather dependent.
Yeah, absolutely.
And other performers like, right, you're now pivoting to this, which was fantastic because of that pre-mortem and that organisation that you'd done. It's always great watching you do that. And as I say, when you turn to, okay, so my act is no longer going ahead. I'm putting the wellies on and making sure everyone else is okay and supporting those people. So you obviously have that incredible support within your own team, and you have to have that trust in each other to know that you've got each other's back. There's a lot of work that goes into that. We'd also talked recently about the trust that goes into our clients, that really at the level that we sort of work at, we're working with corporate clients and they have a lot on their line that they need to invest in their suppliers. Trust is such a critical point.
Absolutely. We actually did this piece on risk, and for most people, risk is an OSH, it's a physical thing. But when we talk about events, risk is so much more. Risk is not just the physical and OSH components. There's financial risk, there's branding risk, there's reputational risk, there's poor execution components, not meeting sponsors' requirements, etc. So, risk is a much more mature understanding than what people give it credit for, and understanding the components in your day. Understanding risk and empathizing with that client and making plans around it is an amazing way, for both sides to foster trust.
Absolutely.
Because your risk and my risk are not the same, but they meet in the middle.
Yes. It's that conversation that's a really important part of building that relationship. It's not just saying yes and then letting stuff go to hell. It's being honest sometimes, having difficult conversations with clients where you can anticipate something and you can actually work with them to say, this is what you've asked for, but this is this is our experience. But obviously with your experience, they build that trust and go, we can't do that. However, I've got this idea. Allows you to work in a way that you can provide different solutions and be that creative thought leader as well. And I've seen you do that in a number of different ways.
It's always complex, especially when you want to deliver exactly what you said you're going to do, because your integrity is marked for that.
Yes.
And I really want to, without disclosing any particular intricacies around it, we've had situations where a performance that we originally had pitched and had been accepted was unable to go ahead due to, a list of, could be illness, could be health, could be mental illness, could be just tastes have changed, like things that were used to be acceptable are now no longer acceptable in terms of acts. The market's growing up and it's changing and we're all becoming more evolved and aware. And so having to relay that back can be really uncomfortable, but it has to be a two-way dialogue because, we approach those conversations with candor but they're really making those uncomfortable conversations are critical in building trust, because it's great when it goes great, but my goodness, it sounds contrite, but when it goes bad and you manage it well, it's better forever.
It is. It really is. And it's a horrible experience to go through. But when you do develop those relationships with the client where it's not been straightforward, it's been difficult, and it's how you resolved and work things, those relationships remain generally, in my experience, the long-lasting bonds of clients, because they know seeing you at your best is very different from seeing you at your worst. And how you manage in a crisis, which we've talked about in events.
Goodness.
It's not about the dream vision. It's about what can go wrong and how to manage that. And especially we're talking more about safety in your aspect, because you're dealing with performers that are physically putting themselves on the line. The element of shock, it really comes down to the fact that these people are putting themselves at risk.
And also creative risk as well.
Yes.
When you've got, I'll use the example of juggling. Juggling outside is really hard.
Yeah.
If there's any sort of wind, no matter how good a juggler you are, that club or ball or whatever you're juggling could get blown out of your hand, or it changes no matter how practiced you are.
Right.
Because
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Of course.
Same with hand balancing. It's a body upright in the air. Like, it's windy, it's rainy, like it's really hard.
Yeah.
Even hula hooping, which you joined me on stage a lot.
Yeah.
If the wind
I
comes
thought it was going to be a lot better than I would be.
but the wind can really affect it. The tilt of the stage can really affect it. If the stage is damp.
For sure windy and tilted.
Yeah.
Or above.
And sometimes you can only really get 60% of your act in because of the conditions. And there might be other conditions that aren't physically obvious either, that you might have to cut time.
Yes.
And I've certainly been in the scenario where to get the event up, my quality of work has had to suffer, but it's still at the aim as an artist to make sure that the whole event has achieved its outcome. And it feels really difficult as an artist because you always want to put in that preparation time. However, you go, I could put 3 hours into preparing this more. Instead, I have to choose to put in an hour and put 2 hours in to make sure everyone else is succeeding and that we succeed as a whole, and that at this point as the artist I might have to take the hit, but it'll still be at a quality where it's acceptable to put it on stage because we've had experience to deal with it at this level, because the mission is to spread joy. It's not to have a perfect technical act.
Yes.
The job is to be present in the moment.
Yeah. Also, what I've seen you do is just let go of your own ego. It's not about your show. It's about maybe there's time for somebody else to do that. And that as a performer where you want to do your best job and you want to be on stage and you want to do that, I'm sure you've had to, as you evolve, learn that balance between being a business manager and director and being a performer who is always wanting to do her best.
Yes.
And wanting to make sure like the overall outcome, maybe it's not me, maybe it's somebody else, even though you might really want to put yourself in that spot.
And I think as I've grown as a human being, as an artist, as an entrepreneur, that's a balance, and it's a balance that I fight every day. It's like, I really enjoy doing that.
Yeah. I want to do that.
I really want to do that. Am I the right person to do that? Probably in this situation, or probably not. Could someone else benefit significantly that can help me at another, or help us at another level by doing this role, even though I might miss out this time? That's really important.
Yeah.
That's just maturity.
And that
time.
is maturity. Isn't that funny when you get to that stage, you go, oh, damn, she's growing up.
Oh, it's real hard. It's real hard.
But it's fantastic because that's where your role as a mentor steps up.
Yeah. I think there's also an element as an artist. It's okay to put the things down that you've done before.
Yes.
Why don't famous actors take on roles the second time? I've done them. I'm not growing from it.
Yeah.
What else can we grow from?
Yes.
should the person who's at this elite level be doing, you know, a 2-hour ambassador role? Yeah, they can. Maybe they do that because they enjoy it and they need the income. Should they be doing it, or should we be trying to push
for something
for
else?
for a higher capacity of learning, for a higher experience so that they can get to the next level? And it's something that comes up a lot.
In terms of your sort of growth, you work very hard internally and physically to develop yourself. Are there specific mentors that you work with, or?
Yes. So I'll come back to COVID. I found out I was pregnant and had to make it. It was a big year. All our work disappeared. Was suddenly pregnant. World's worst morning sickness. I'm sure everyone hears that. Sitting on a beach going, oh my gosh, like, you know, what does this look like? Especially events aren't going to be the same, and they still are not the same really. People have changed. And so I was trying to work out what steps could I take while we worked out what the world was doing to be in better shape when we started with, you know, very few resources. And so I'd made the decision that maybe I was going to do my cultural leadership masters or something at university and go on with some ongoing learning. But as my mother had been an academic, I was like, I don't think this. I'm just going to wind up in government, which is important and a great leadership role.
But it's not right for you.
It's not where I want to go. I still want to be making art. This joy thing's really important. I hadn't really worked out what that was. How do we step? And so I just started calling people and talking to them and seeing what their experience was like and how they grew their businesses and if they still had a business. There's a lot of tears, probably about 40 phone calls.
It's like an unofficial thesis / counselling session.
And I spoke to Bonnie Davies, a.k.a.
Business guru, a.k.a. famous Sharon, a.k.a. just...
And she was like, hey, maybe you want to go and talk to the guys from the Entrepreneurs Organisation. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll go have a chat. And went and chatted to the program and then was trying to work out if I qualify because there's some qualifications as a business, and then was assigned with a mentor.
Wow.
So it's peer-to-peer coaching. And it's been 3 years and our business is 4 times the size.
Wow.
And, you know, that process, while it's not been easy, I just feel that having peer-to-peer group and different has been, I feel incredibly lucky, and it was a big decision to go, well, I could spend this on this or this and this, and best decision of my career other than going to China.
But to use a Bonnieism, because she's just great with the business one-liners, is where luck is where hard work and opportunity meet.
That's right.
And I love that. It really stuck with me because I feel like that is a prime example of you where for many reasons the art suffered in COVID and business models just weren't designed for that. For you to go in and completely restructure, retrain, work with a mentor, and now to be 4 times the size is a huge triumph.
Yeah.
Are you finally prepared to call yourself an entrepreneur?
I don't think I was ever rejecting that, but it just wasn't at my front anymore.
Yes.
Because I think every artist in their own way is an entrepreneur because you're trying something, you're trying to create a new path that's different from everyone. Yeah. So for me, they're interchangeable.
So the entertainer and entrepreneur is to you an interchangeable. Yeah. I really resonate with that. I think the people that you see that are working, gosh, we can name just a list. Let's name from your perspective some of the performers that you work with.
Oh my goodness! Just at
just off the top of your head, like some of the performers, just so people get an
famous
idea.
Sharon. I mean, we've spoken about her already. Like amazing human being, both sides of the coin, and tenacity, resilience, grit, just clear. I love that.
Yes.
You've got some incredible. Oh gosh, hang on. People who don't necessarily who go under the radar. David Gardner.
Yes.
PR,
yes.
Made my bestie. But just, quietly get it done at such a high level. There are countless people in our sector here in Western Australia. We have some just incredible artists and makers and producers and entrepreneurs here. It's just phenomenal.
It's a really incredible space, and I think particularly in Perth, it's a very close-knit community because you're reliant on your network, your resources of each other, and the word of mouth is very, very important here, more so than any Google ads or Facebook reviews or anything like that. Somebody will call a contact and make sure that there's a reference somehow. That's how it works.
Absolutely.
It's
back check everything.
Back check.
Territory check. Territory check's my favourite thing.
Territory check.
Yeah, well, because, it is a small industry and clients go around and around. There's only so many clients here unless there's new businesses. Let's be honest. And there's not a huge success pipeline of new businesses that are in have millions of dollars. Everyone really forgets how much producing any event costs now, with, cost of living, services, et cetera, and just less people. I mean, in terms of less services available and less matured services. Lots of new in our market that's coming in at the moment. There's a lot of very great businesses, but a lot of businesses were knocked out and that experience disappeared with them when they disappeared. And you can see that I feel, and it's a personal observation, that there seems to be a reduction of professionalism in our sector at the moment because there's so much new in. And that's okay. It's just that's how markets change. But there's lots of new entries. And so there's this missing piece of maturity, information, experience, runs on the board that has to be a part of the ecology.
It's not really the fault of the up-and-comers by any means.
Not at all.
Because they haven't had the opportunity to learn the admin that's required, market rates, understanding that by undercutting, you're actually not really helping the industry as a whole.
But all those things aside, like showing up every day, and it's the same as I use the word artist, entrepreneur, freelancing is great, but you still have to show up every day. That means show up, do your training, do your studio time, do your administration, respond to that client within a respectful time, or respond to your booking agent in a respectful time, which is 24 to 48 hours. Or if you can't respond in that time because you don't know, tell them that you've read the email.
Yes.
And when you'll come back to them so you can consider it.
This is 101 people.
Yeah. Because it's dialogue. So if you ghost people, they don't know.
No.
And, we all have days where we can't respond because we're emotional, having trouble. But it's okay to say, I just can't get to this right now. If you need to go somewhere else because time is an issue, go somewhere else.
Yes. And that speaks to why you've done so well, because you're very responsive and
try to be.
You're fantastic. It's a really important part of business that it's beyond the creative talent. Your relationships will thrive if you're honest with people. Like, you mightn't have a chance to actually write back to that proper proposal, but you can say, I don't have time to write back. I will get back to you. And that will just go put you miles ahead of anyone else who actually replies straight away with the wrong offering.
Yeah, I want to make sure that, it's not just about doing the business. It's about doing the right business.
The right business.
The right business for the right person, the right mix, making sure all the pieces. It's like if you add salt instead of sugar into a chocolate cake, it is not going to go well for anyone. No. And I think both sides of the coin in terms of clients and artists, and where we all sit and forget that is actually a really artistic process in putting any event together and putting the right team together.
Yes.
I don't know yet other than cooking analogy. I don't know how to.
I'm just still tasting that salty chocolate cake.
Yeah. Look, salt caramel, don't get me wrong, but it's the right amount.
I'm sure there's still sugar in there.
But coming back to the clients thing, I think where I had my major revelation is, you would know, we have an audience and we have clients. And the two might occasionally cross over. But ultimately, it's our clients that allow us to pay our mortgages, our rent, our bills, keep our everyday going, and our ability to keep forging new relationships, new creative pursuits, the way to get to and accelerate to the next point. Unfortunately, unless our audiences are buying tickets, really provide just a percentage. And that's when I felt that I shifted, and the big piece that shifted me was Kevin Kelly's short essay, 1,000 True Fans. You can survive with very few clients and do really well. If you're trying to do everything for your audience, unless they're actually finding a way to sustain you, it's a lost cause. Not a lost cause, but it's just think about the energy that you're throwing out and thinking about the person that you want to be and grow into. Is your audience helping you or hurting you?
Yes.
And I'd left social media personally pretty much because I felt, even though it was great people responding to Instagram and LinkedIn, that it was actually hurting what I was trying to do.
Right.
And not just hurting what I was trying to do, hurting my time spent, that I was actually not getting what made me
absolutely
a whole human being done. And it's a super valuable tool on both sides to just think more about who you are seen to be than actually do the tough work.
It's very important because when you are sharing something and you get sort of good response and engagement, you get little dopamine hits. But they're vanity metrics, because the bottom line is, are you getting the sort of work that you want to get? Are you working with the type of people that you want to work with? And are you happy with the sort of work that you do?
Yeah.
If that is all aligned, then you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
If you are there just trying to create content because you haven't done something that week and so you're going to do a reel on cooking and you're nowhere near in that market, it's a waste of creative space.
Well, I think
but you feel that sort of pressure that you need to put stuff out there.
That's it. And I think this is...
I do love watching TikToks on food stuff.
Oh, who does that?
Like, so I'm saying that, but you know what I mean? Like it's the bandwidth of what's kind of relevant to your business. If you're using Instagram, for instance, as a business tool, it has to be relevant to something that's going to add value to your business.
Well, I always looked at it in terms of like, it's really simple. In the same way your body responds to what you eat, your brain responds to what you consume in terms of information. So by cutting off Instagram for me, like even as an artist, I was not consuming that other information, which gave me space to actually go, oh, well, actually I need education on these spaces. Like, why isn't this working? Okay, dig into that. And I went through a period of rapid change and, you know, we're sitting here having this like discussion about the incredibly successful Western Australian market and all these things that I've had. But actually that period of growth has been really uncomfortable. You know, I've sacrificed relationships. We've removed clients that were no longer fit. To make space for all these things, we had to get really uncomfortable. I had to get really uncomfortable as a human being and start paring back some of the things that we were doing to make space for the good stuff. It was like, you know, the garden prune, which sounds really brutal. And in some ways it was. There's definitely elements that were incredibly brutal to assume this growth. We're sitting here saying, you know, it's fun and it's great, but it's regularly putting your ass in the hot fire.
And making sure that it's aligned with your vision. And if you don't have a vision or you haven't created space to actually think about the why you're doing things and the motivation. You talked before about finding that muse, and that's a really lovely analogy about creating space and making sure you find the muse. Can you talk to the sort of events that you are sort of aiming for or the sort of environment that you are wanting to be in now, or is it?
So it's a little bit mixed because we have a company strategy and then, of course, I have my own personal strategy.
Yes.
And I've, you know, finally been able to separate them from the company, and that was really uncomfortable in terms of growth.
So you had it really quite interchanged, your personal goals, and then realised that actually in order for your business to grow, you had to separate.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me about your personal goals.
So there's still some similarities between the Fliptease's mission and then my personal goals, so Fliptease's goal is to spread joy through live events and connect people. My personal goals.
Yes, you do. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. We have more to do. It's exciting. But my personal goals is to have a big, bold, beautiful life. Like that's just it. So to pursue the things and create vehicles that enable me to do that, to support as many people as I can within those values to do that, and also help bring to reality the dreams of others in the spaces that we work with. On top of that, I have a responsibility to my family, and I really, my husband and I did like a 30-40 year plan the other day, which is really exciting, but just like it takes time to plan those things and they have to be brought back. And again, our job is to just have these big, bold lives and to, I guess one of the big ones is if you're not realizing who you are, and I definitely have repressed this over time, of like, am I an artist? Am I really an artist?
Yeah.
Am I an entrepreneur? Am I faking both? Yeah. But if you don't live who you really are, if you are constantly compromising, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't make an income from what you're doing, and obviously you've got to eat, but are you living an honest life? Like we have an ethical duty to ourselves to live the life that we were put on this planet to live. And I very much feel like I finally arrived in that. Yes.
Which means that you've put that groundwork in.
Yes.
And that now that you've got that groundwork, you're like, okay, full steam ahead.
Yes.
Post-COVID.
Yes.
And we do talk pre and post-COVID because it's such a clear line between our lives as performers, working in the event space, as producers, everything that we've done and the way that we approach things. And also certain people who are no longer working in the industry and those that are, we're all working in a very different way. I can't really name anyone who is working the same. Like we've all been impacted. And sometimes there is the obvious downsides, but I always enjoy talking to people about the silver lining of their COVID experience and the things that they benefited from. And quite often it's through painful growth.
Oh, it's definitely painful growth.
Yeah.
It's the growth that I had
and
to
that
have.
you wouldn't want to do. You wouldn't have put time to it unless we had to do it and forced upon us and kicking and screaming. But the work that's done now means that the opportunities that you've got coming up are pretty exciting. So I know that you have a couple of other people that you work with in the business. How many people you have full-time?
So full-time in the office, I have our talent manager, Samantha Smith, and our operations manager, Natalie Nivison, and we're about to bring on a part-time wardrobe.
Oh, what a fun role that will be.
Yeah. It is fun.
I'm just imagining just there like someone like, you know, a movie montage of someone like walking around with like streamers just being
some days. Some days.
That's my reality. And then also that person just like another pair of elf shoes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, another squirty costume, something else. Why has this person busted out the knee in this yet again?
Yes, it's just like we got darning elf socks.
Oh my goodness. It's like over Christmas in a week we might have 40 pairs of earrings that all need disinfecting. Like that's, you know, that's that level of detail or, you know, there might be 300 rechargeable batteries that have to get recharged and monitored. You can't leave that.
No, they can't be left there. Nope. And then also when you need them, where are they?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, someone has to know where they are.
Yeah, that's it. And so, you know, maintaining a database is all that fun stuff. Like the Barbie wardrobe is the dream.
Yes.
It's more like Clueless where she's got the computer wardrobe and you've got to know where everything in the computer is to be able to line everything up.
You've got to be able to ask the right questions.
Yeah, and then go find it. So that's really cool. And then looks like we're going to get another 2 hires in for next year.
Fantastic.
But obviously, you know, what no one talks about is funding that growth over time and making sure that we're sustainable, making sure that the model is growing to accommodate that. And that's been a significant learning capacity and making sure the industry can sustain that level of growth over time. There's a reason we were working at the level we were working at for so long is because the industry wasn't ready for that growth and I wasn't ready for that as a leader either. So there's just constant considerations to be in mind.
It's with that growth as well is we're now working with the businesses that have also changed their business model and the way that they're going about things. That might be a change in actual your person that you're dealing with, so that there's new contacts, there's new company structures. They might be working on a freelancer model where you might have worked with them one sort of producer for a long time. So I think we're all in this navigating space of seeing how other people are doing their businesses. First of all, wanting to work to our vision, but then you do have to make sure that your business model works for your clients because they're the ones, as you say, pay the bills. So it is that kind of ongoing process. But I do think part of this growth period is always going to be reliant on those relationships at the end of it. Is being able to go back to those people and understanding how you can service their needs whilst also building your creative vision.
Yeah, it's interesting, again, in that sort of muse context, especially when you're growing, especially when you're changing and you're trying to hit your goals. And there's this concept, there's a book called The War of Art, and he talks about this he's the guy that wrote Bag of Ants, the story of Bag of Ants.
Yes.
And he's like, when you're growing, our tendency is to reach out sideways to our friends and family. But their role and society role is to actually keep you safe and keep you close. And so they tend to go, be realistic or don't reach too high or I think that's really irresponsible that you're reaching that far or that direction. Like we feel that you're changing. We need to have an exchange about this. When in actual fact, if you don't reach your goals, if you don't find your potential because you felt encumbered by pleasing other people and pleasing them. And there's definitely responsibilities that we play in society to fill those needs of being responsible in our spaces. Then your erosion of self comes through. Like if you never try to be the musician, if you never try to be the artist that you know that you're born to be, you wind up bitter and upset and blaming others. And it's just it's not a version of you that you're put on this planet to be.
Yes. And you're not honouring that. You're not honouring we were talking before about like that version of yourself that you are put on this earth for. But it takes a lot of resilience also to stick to that.
It's so easy to crush that inner child, that whoever that being is. It is terrifying to reach up. But people who are already up there are ready to help and be generous, obviously be considered and respectful of time. But as soon as I started asking, I couldn't believe how generous and helpful and, you know, because you've been doing the work, right? This isn't coming from, today I want to be this thing.
Yes.
It's like, because you've been doing it. You've been living it the whole time and then you start reaching up and you're just like, help me get to the next level. I think this, what's your experience? Can you share me the experience that you've had that, okay, can you tell me about what changed in your relationships? How did you meet that person? And suddenly you're like, oh my goodness, all these things that I've been struggling with for years, like I'm not alone. There's just, I don't get to talk to the other 5%.
No. And unless you sort of reach out and connect, I find people are typically very generous, such as yourself. You are so busy at the moment, and finding a little window for us to connect wasn't straightforward, but you were very generous in allowing this time, which is obviously an opportunity for me to explore my creative project. And I think that's part of this situation, is reaching out to people more senior or more experienced that we can learn from, in the same way that they will pass down information and we do to people that we also mentor, people that are getting started. Passing on jobs that you might love to do or you've done before, but you just know that you've done it and it's time for someone else to benefit from that.
Exactly.
It's part of how you develop and also how you pass that on. And I just think that's a critical part of our ecosystem that I really love. How it really works at Essence is a bit of a pay it forward model.
I think so too. I think about this a lot as those territories and how territories change over time. And the first jobs, even if you're not an artist, even not an entrepreneur, you wouldn't take the job that you took at 17 as you would at 25 because you've changed, and that spot is there at a specific time for a specific place for a specific person. By you not taking the thing that you are meant for, you're filling up someone else's space.
Yes. And giving them the opportunity to step up where you learnt and you grew so much by having that.
I feel one of the pressures that we get as a sector, especially for those up-and-coming spaces and indeed anyone around us who's having these complicated conversations and complicated event ecologies, is this expectation that leaders or outliers, as you know what that's like, that we are going to get it right 100% of the time. When in fact we are also we try, but we're also unsupervised adults working it out. Doesn't matter how much education you have, doesn't matter how much experience you have. There's something different every day, and the experience is what takes you there. You've got to have the difficult experience to learn from it,
and they're always the ones you learn the most from. The most painful, where you sit in the car and you have those like quiet moment talking to yourself. You can't sleep because you're playing through. They are painful, but that's part of the growth. But you also come down to those relationships with people that allow you an opportunity to try things, knowing that like overall it's gone well, and that happens from time to time, and that's life. And I think that's part of working in a space of making sure that because you still need to push and challenge yourself, and you can't do that by being safe 100% of the time. You have to try things that sometimes there's going to be an audience. It's going to be the first time you're seeing it and you're doing it live. There's always going to have to be a first.
And you've got to...
I don't know many people who nail everything on the first try.
Never. In fact, I hope you don't, because you can't learn. If you're making a hit on the first one, it's going to be really hollow. You won't have enough lessons to get to the next success.
Or you haven't pushed yourself high enough that. I love talking about event fails because I think they're the things.
Oh, so many. That was the wrong show, wrong time.
It is the wrong show, because I also want to respect my clients and talk about that. But generally you talk about how fun things were and what happened, but you generally talk about the things that didn't go right and why they didn't go right. And it's apart from the fact sometimes it can be quite funny, it can be quite frustrating. It's a real bonding experience because you learn from those. You accelerate so much more in those what the hell moments.
I won't disclose the client, but I recently had my baby and I was strapping myself into this head-to-toe sequin tight gown on quite a glamorous gig. Trying not to lactate through my ball dress as I'm talking with all these VIPs. And my client and I were standing in the stairwell. She'd also just had a baby, maybe 3 or 4 weeks when my daughter was 6 months old. And we're both breast pumping in thing going, things have changed since 10 years ago when we're all okay, do the gig, let's go party.
Yeah, exactly. In a moment.
Am I through my costume? No. Are you good? Do you just, I don't know. I just, no sleep, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then everyone's game facing out and just have this beautiful bonding moment of hey, this incredible thing that we've built is going on, but actually here we are as complicated, exhausted human beings managing our staff out there, ourselves, our own energy,
and
our
as
families.
new mums, what a great way to really connect with someone else who
in a dicey
doesn't
stairwell.
Understand what happened. When everyone else sees what's happened, they glamour and these two young mums just standing there dealing with the trials and tribulations of
mastitis. But,
But that's so important. Like, I'm sure you will maintain a relationship with this woman.
I think what I love about our sector is the diversity of different people you meet.
Yes.
From, the team that are putting in chairs and tables or picking up rubbish to the high-profile artists to, the VIP political clients on press call. Like, there's this I don't know where the expression came from, but never trust an artist because they mix with all sorts. And we truly get to.
We do.
I think of all the, at some point either stood next to or talked to a political leader from every aspect in Australia and also internationally, usually in some sort of like secret number.
Yes.
But always had a conversation or talking to owners or, I remember teaching a particular client who turns out to run one of the largest construction companies here, whip cracking, and we were discussing the complications with people. And so you have this opportunity to really connect with and share and hear from just the most incredible array of people. I don't know another role that does that.
No.
And also have audience shares about, you did my kid's 10th birthday party at the beach. I saw you, came and said hello, and she's 20 now and she comes to the mermaids. But those moments of share, and that's what the importance of live connection is and why events are so critical.
It is. And you are part of that person's story. Those highlight reels of life as they look back on as a mermaid, as a glamorous performer, as an acrobat, or as Renee back of house with her wellies and trench coat on. With that, we shall have a little cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You too. Cheers.
That brings us to the end of Champagne Chats. And remember, may the only pain in your life be champagne.